Yeah. Oh. But we are live. Welcome to the Vomitorium, everyone. As always, I'm your host, The Metal, and joining me is my co-host, Marsupial Gamer. How you doing today?
Pretty good. I got one last night of a lot of sleep, like way too much sleep, before I go back to work tomorrow.
I haven't been getting enough sleep at all. Like, I don't know. It might just be too hot in here. Or too bright. I don't know. Usually I'm good at sleeping through sunlight. Like, that doesn't bother me. Though the place that I was at before this, they had cardboard up against the window with curtains in front of it. So it was effectively like blackout curtains. And then I was in a room that had blackout curtains. And then I was in a garage, which is effectively dark. So maybe I have just gotten too used to it being completely dark even during the daytime, and the light might be waking me up. I don't know. I need to put something here. I've got like this really black blanket on here that I don't actually sleep under, because if anybody follows me on Twitter, I've been using the same comforter for the last like 23 years. So like the blanket serves more as a sheet, even though there are sheets underneath it. I probably could just pin this like black quilted blanket up against the window here. It would probably cover the whole thing and keep it darker here. I probably should.
Well, I really need to. Yeah, it's too tempting being on a staycation to be kind of like just lazy in all respects, which is great, but you know. I need to. God, I'm getting like acne or something on my forehead.
Acne.
And I don't know. I probably because I haven't showered in like 3 days.
Yeah.
Because why? I haven't seen any human beings in
Maybe
a while, so I need.
You really only need to shower like twice a week anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, apparently I need to shower every day because.
Yeah. Well, so
very oily skin or something.
If you're not showering every day, because the water pressure is actually the problem on your skin, what you should be doing on the other days is basically like a cloth or sponge bath, like actually going, and that you can do your pits that way too. You don't have to do like a full bath every single day.
Yeah.
That's what they used to do in medieval times, right? Like people had basins filled with water in their house, and they would just kind of like take a cloth to them, and that's how they'd stay clean.
Yeah. Well, I got, when I work every day, and I'm usually on camera with, my coworkers pretty much every day. I tend to take a shower every day and brush my teeth and all that. So
well, the real question is, when you're in the shower, are you washing your face, like specifically?
I do.
Okay. Because some people don't. They just kind of like let the water drip on them, and it's like, listen, if that's all the person does, they probably should be washing their face in the sink as well, because that's not doing it. Hey, Mike, I'm dropping to say hi and give a like and share. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I actually, it's funny because I've seen like people, and it's kind of jokey, but like I've seen tweets about, why do men not actually wash when they take a shower? They just kind of, like they'll wash their hair or something like that. And I'm like, I do. I actually pick up the
But it's true. A lot of people don't.
Wash my face and my armpits and everything.
And they'll think like, well, I'm putting shampoo in my hair and there's soap in the shampoo, so it's going to be dripping down everywhere. It's like, well, no,
it's
because
nothing.
Like if you're tilting your hair back so you don't get shampoo in your eyes, you're clearly not getting it on your face anyway. Like, yes, there is soap and shampoo. You could wash your skin with that. Not conditioner. There's no soap in that, just oil to refresh your scalp. But like you'd have to like actively be scrubbing it in places for it to have any effect. Or, the worst one. People don't wash their legs. I don't get this. As somebody who walks barefoot a lot, like I specifically take the time to wash my legs and feet when I take a shower. And there's people who's like, well, water gets on it.
Yeah, I don't always wash like the bottoms of my feet because then I feel like I'm gonna slip and kill myself in the shower.
No, see, that's why,
It's
you're
I use
flexible
soap.
and you get the shower with the hose and you sit down on the ground and scrub your foot,
Yeah, I just rely on the friction between my foot and the bottom of the shower to at least get the most of the dirt off, I guess. But yes, I usually do. In fact, it probably doesn't help that the soap that I use probably like dries out my skin and everything, which
Oh yeah,
can be
probably.
good or bad. But good for the oiliness, not great for the eczema.
Yeah. What kind of soap do you use?
Usually Dove.
Dove? Yeah, I mean, Dove's usually pretty good. But,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. I like
Well, then
Irish Spring, but not everybody can use Irish Spring because there's something in it that some people are allergic to, and I'm like, I'm sorry, that's my favorite. But I usually have to keep like some type of body wash or something that doesn't have an allergen in it, just in case somebody needs to like shower over here and they just can't use Irish Spring.
Yeah. Yeah, I use what do you call it? All free and clear when I wash my clothes, and lately I've been washing Peach's clothes too. So I hope that that's helped make them less. She doesn't really have allergies or anything like that, but figure that keeps it from having soap residue.
Yeah. See, Mike asks, "Hey Metal, did you tell Marsupial about the wonky science in the world of Lev Gleason's The Claw?" Oh yeah, there was this really stupid thing in there. I'm gonna call it stupid, where the dude had a light bulb, and he filled the light bulb with some type of gas, which, I mean, up until LEDs, light bulbs were filled with gas, so that part makes sense. It's the rest of it that's stupid. For some reason, the interaction with the light in this gas would freeze water specifically. Like nothing else, it just froze water that the light touched. And I thought it was really stupid because to show it off, he shined the light at a cup, right? That was like spilling out, so the water that was spilling out would freeze in midair. It was like, it's also crossing his arm, like you've got water in your body, right? You've got blood, there's water in your cells. Why would you, if a light could freeze water, why would you want to point that light at your arm ever? But it was just like they were putting them inside the headlights of a car and tilting it downward, which you can't tilt the headlights of a car downward anyway. But they were tilting it downward to freeze the water in the ocean to make an ice bridge, kind of like Iceman style. But it wasn't Iceman style. It was freezing it all the way down in like a tight triangle. I was like, that's also not how freezing works. Even if the light could freeze the water, that's not how freezing works. It would hit the surface first, it would spread because it would be pulling the energy from the water around it, creating an endothermic reaction, and maybe it would start going downward, but it would be like, an ice sheet or iceberg going downward. It would go in a triangle in the other direction. Yeah. It wouldn't just create like a road going all the way down. It was a comic from like the Golden Age. Yeah. You know how science was in comics in the Golden Age.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how it would. I guess it would depend on whether the light could penetrate, like once it's created a layer of ice at the top, does it penetrate down below that and make more layers?
No, because like if we know anything about like ice sheets, right, like ice shelves or anything floating in ice, it actually gets darker underneath it after the ice is, say, half the thickness of this room's height, right? Like at that point, the only light is that's wrapping around from the surface. If you're like directly underneath a large ice sheet, it's just dark. There's no light coming through because the ice is too thick.
Yeah, it would seem like it would just make an actually quite thin layer.
Yeah.
Like, maybe an inch or two. I don't know.
I mean, maybe it could get up to a foot. Right. But also, like, how fast is it freezing that a car can zip down this thing? And there's just all kinds of issues. And it'd be wider than it would be deep because it would be pulling energy from the water around it. So it would just be creating a shelf.
And how did this light freeze the ice in the first place?
Apparently some weird interaction with the gas inside the light bulb. It's not how physics works, but that's what happened.
Created like an endothermic reaction where it just sucked the energy out, or
I don't know. It's like a reverse laser.
Yeah.
But like if light was coming out, right, that means there is radiant energy. So heat would be coming out of the bowl. Very small amounts of heat, not enough to actually melt ice if it was already there, but especially with how dispersed the light is. But like,
it would make more sense if it was just air. Like why light? Like just if it was just a gas coming out. And
it was just, but the gas was inside the light bulb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait, so was the gas being released at all, or just the light?
I don't know. It doesn't say. But I'm assuming just the light because
like the light bulb was enclosed?
Yeah, it was just a light bulb. Right, and the gas was inside of it. So it had to have just been the light. And that still makes sense because like light bulbs have gas inside of them, at least prior to LEDs, so.
But if the gas isn't being released, if it's only the light is
heat. It's a source of energy. Yeah. Radiation.
Yeah. I can't think of any
particles bouncing around in there, photons.
Yeah, I can't think of any part of the light spectrum that would have an endothermic reaction. It would be the exact opposite.
Yeah. It's
comic books.
You can you can kind of fudge something like Superman's ice breath since it's not heat related, right? Because he could just create like a vacuum inside his lungs so that the air is so much colder than it is outside. There's some things you could like fudge with that.
Yeah,
you can't do that with light though.
I always figured the way his breath worked was like a what do you call it? Is it a Leidenfrost or a
yeah.
Whatever effect it is that basically moving air has a lower pressure. So if he could lower the pressure,
but he'd have to do that in his lungs first before it came out. But he's Superman; he'd be able to do that in his lungs.
Well,
because the air pressure in your lungs are already at a very certain capacity. It's almost atmospheric. Right, so it's even if he compresses it with his mouth, right, to be able to move it super fast, right, which is what you're thinking with the Leidenfrost.
Yeah, or not. That's the wrong word, but I was thinking it wasn't that the air coming out of his breath was cold; it was that it was just moving so fast that it created a near vacuum of pressure above the water, which would cause it to freeze at room temperature.
Liquid. That's right. At the surface of something.
Yeah. What's the effect of moving air pressure? Bernoulli's principle.
Yeah, Bernoulli's.
I figured it was working on Bernoulli's.
There's a problem with that though, right? And it is Bernoulli's principle works. Let me explain it. In the system already, right? So like the conditions for it are already there due to like the Coriolis effect and the winds moving and everything else, or even if you make a wind tunnel, to like just pop it out of nowhere, isolated from his breath, you'd actually be creating more heat than you would be taking it away from something, right? Because of the friction of the air. It's just coming out of nowhere. It's disturbing the natural atmosphere and environment that's around. So now you just have fast air particles hitting something out of nowhere. There's actually more heat generated than being taken away from the thing, right? But if he had created super chilled air in his lungs before pulling it out, you might be able to compensate for that.
None of it makes any sense.
No, it doesn't. But anyway, you could stretch it with Superman. Because it's wind. You can't stretch it with light. There's nothing that light can do that just like strips energy away from something because It could strip electrons
I
away
don't know
from
if you
something,
can.
but that would just cause more energy in the system, which would heat things up.
Yeah. See, like it's almost like an anti. Is there such thing as an anti-photon?
No, there's not.
Here's something that says the short answer to "Are there anti-photons?" is yes. But the disappointment here is that antiphotons and photons are the same particles.
Yes. So that's the thing. So every like subatomic particle, which a photon is technically a subatomic particle. So we've got like quarks, gluons, muons, things like that. Supposedly has a negative particle to it, right? So it's like it's supposed to be symmetrical. There are some that are missing that we can't account for, but we just have to roll with it right now. So yeah, there would be another side. The problem is because photons are neutral. If you were to reverse a photon, all you would basically get is another photon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are no real anti-photons.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't understand how a photon would remove energy when it's.
They can't.
Yeah.
Can only add energy to a system.
Oh well, it's magic. That's how you.
See, that's
explain
why
it.
I liked
Just
the
magic.
villain of that comic more than I liked the hero, who was supposed to be like a chemist, inventor, adventurer, as Mike says. The villain, the Claw, was literally just magic. At one point, he made himself like super big and did like the Ursula whirlpool thing before Ursula did it in Disney. So it's like, yeah, no, I love magic villains. You can explain away magic. It's just magic.
Yeah.
Magic's great.
Exactly. Yeah, as long and as long as you stick with your stated rules, if you make rules, you can say, well, they can be arbitrary, but as long as you stick with them,
as long as the reader can follow, right? And if your magic is so soft that it's ruleless, that can be fine too, as long as the reader can follow. Like Fantasia's that way. What was that? They actually tried to make a sequel, sort of, to Fantasia that had nothing to do with Fantasia. It was The Sorcerer's Apprentice, where he is supposed to basically... Mickey was the Sorcerer's Apprentice in Fantasia. So they kind of just made a movie out of the concept of that. And Nick Cage played the sorcerer, though he wasn't Yen Sid. It was the concept from Fantasia. It was a Disney movie, too. But Sorcerer's Apprentice has the softest magic system ever, because he could basically do whatever, but it's easy to follow and the characterization is good. So like you could do that. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. I like that movie.
It's a good movie.
What's his name? The guy who did the voice in
How to Train Your
How
Dragon.
to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah, I can never remember his name. But he's a very distinguished voice. Like you always know it's him when you hear it. That's kind of talks in the back of his throat almost. It's a hard voice to do, right?
Yeah,
it's almost because it's almost like you're aiming for Kermit the Frog, but you don't want to sound Kermit-y. You just kind of want to sound like some guy who'd get shoved into a locker.
Yeah, that's just his voice. It's weird.
Yeah. But no, it's a good voice though. It's good for so many characters. I prefer his voice acting to his live action roles because of his distinguished voice.
Yeah.
I just hate the fact that like all the kids in How to Train Your Dragon speak with like American English accents, and all of their parents have like these really thick, almost more Scottish than actually Nordic accents, even though they should probably be close to like Norwegian. But still, they all have these like very thick accents, and the kids don't. And I'm like, what? Why?
It's fun.
Yeah,
I love that series.
It's a good
I
series.
used to watch the. They had a cartoon. I think it was may have been Netflix. On the what was it, from the Tales from the Edge or something like that, whatever it was called. Yeah, I actually watched all of it.
Well, because there was a How to Train Your Dragon. Is that DreamWorks or whatever? It might have been on Nickelodeon. There was an actual show for a while too that filled in like a gap in the between like two of the movies. That I only even know exists because Buck used to watch it. I think before
Yeah.
the Netflix one, like there was another one, right? It was like Writers of Urk or whatever it was called.
Oh yeah. Okay, so the Netflix one is Riders of Burke.
Okay.
Um, what was it called? Race to the Edge. That's what it
Race to
was.
the
I think
Edge,
that
okay.
was actually. Yeah, I don't know if that was Netflix. That was the one I used to watch. Yeah, it was. That was also Netflix.
It was like
But
I couldn't get into the series as much as I tried to, because it just wasn't as dynamic, I guess.
Yeah,
As
the movies
it's
are-
like the characterization in
much
the movie,
better, yeah.
right? Like the way the characters progress and stuff. It makes you actually like the characters. The problem with the show is like, oh, we have to make this to where a kid can watch this. So instead of making like this serialized arc that goes over like a few seasons or whatever, it's like almost sitcom-y, where it's like, here's the thing we're doing today, and the characters have to kind of like reset and not progress. And I can't stand that when you came from something that it's like Jimmy Neutron. I used to watch the show, right, because I think it came on when I was like in middle school or high school, but I saw the movie prior to that, right? Like I think it came out when I was going into middle school, and the movie for Jimmy Neutron actually had character development through the movie, and all the characterization was really solid. Every character, all the main characters had some type of progression. But then when they made the show, they basically had to throw out all the character progression from the movie, even though the movie canonically happened in the show. I also forgot to turn off my fan. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's bothering me. But let me get that. Yeah, so they had to throw out all the characterization from Jimmy Neutron, the movie, when they made the show, and even had to change some of the characters to make the show work. And it basically took a show where there were these sweet, well-meaning kids. You should watch the Cartoon Network. Oh, Joshua Hughes says Cartoon Network. It might have been Cartoon Network that the show was on. I just remember there was a show that was aired on TV for How to Train Your Dragon. But yeah, they not only threw out all the character development, they changed the characters and turned everybody into assholes instead of like the well-meaning people they were in the movie. Especially Nick, who was supportive of Jimmy in the movie, and then they turned him into the show's bully because they needed a bully stereotype, right? Or Jimmy was a well-meaning kid that kept making disasters by accident because he just didn't understand what he was doing was wrong. And in the show, they actually kind of almost turned him into like a Sheldon Cooper style asshole before Sheldon Cooper was a thing, where it's like, oh, I'm a jerk because I'm too smart. You know, it's like I know better than everyone and still makes problems. Like I would watch a show, but every single time I saw it, I just hated it. I absolutely, like, this is nothing like the movie. It's all the characters. They took the models out, but it is absolutely nothing like the movie. And that's how I feel like almost every time that I watch a show that came from a movie. At least with How to Train Your Dragon, they didn't change the characters. They just had to, like, keep them in a snapshot until the show was over. And then once you get back to the next movie, they're allowed to progress.
yeah.
And then people are like, well, it's a show for kids. And then I just like, well, why do you hate kids? You can give them better content. They're not stupid. They just don't know anything yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I was watching a thing on the X-Men animated series from the 90s, and how they, you know, it was
Didn't
coming
treat
out of the
kids
80s.
like idiots.
Yeah. Well, it was coming out of the 80s where, you know, basically, yeah, all the cartoons had to resolve everything, you know, in 22 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
Although some shows like the Smurfs, they kept adding characters gradually, but still, it was just
And they would
kind
even reference things that happened in the past, so it wasn't even it wasn't completely serialized. Everything was set episodically, but there was like a continuation to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, apparently when they started with X-Men the animated series, it was kind of like, well, I guess the executives were like, well, it has to be, every episode has to be self-contained, and there can't be, season-long arcs.
Yeah.
And basically, I don't know, producers or the writers or whatever, the creators insisted on allowing, long season arcs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
they had to make
actually-
like a compromise where it's like we could do the long arcs, but every episode still has to have a plot on its own within that.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is fine. I mean, that's kind of what they did with things like, Star Trek: The Next Generation
Yeah.
too. And then occasionally they'd have an episode where it's just like completely self-contained, where it could just be
I think they were
anywhere,
just
almost
worried
unrelated.
about kids and cliffhangers. And of all things,
Yeah.
that's the one worry I can kind of agree with producers, like, because again, kids aren't stupid, but there are two things about kids: they don't know anything yet, and because their brains aren't like super developed, right? They're still in the process of developing. Their temporal sense isn't as good as an adult. So if you leave them on a cliffhanger for a week, you might upset them. You might get them to stop watching a show. Now, this turns out to not be entirely true, as we could see with how like anime caught on and then other serialized work later. But even then, they do try to do certain things to hook the kid with that in mind. Like they'll give you a preview for the next episode, and they'll give you a catch up on the last episode. So it's
That's
iffy.
what they argued,
Yeah.
was that it would actually help retain viewers if they made it kind of like must see TV kind of a thing. Like, you have a chance that somebody might miss an episode, but the goal is to try and get them to watch every single week, and without fail. And if there's a continuous story, they don't want to miss a single episode.
Well, I think for something like the X-Men too, having a plot that is pretty much wrapped up in a single episode that's part of a larger series actually fits it more than something like, say, an anime, because we're looking at the thing as kind of referencing. X-Men comic books would be part of longer arcs, but because they had the idea that every comic is somebody's first comic, they would try to have like a plot that started at the beginning of the comic and ended by the end. And they might give you like a little catch-up thing, like this is what's been going on with the X-Men before you start reading on the splash page. So like last times and next times would be good in that. And I remember that happening a lot in comic book shows after that. I think the X-Men were kind of the ones that started it, because like the Spider-Man TV show always had like a recap thing at the beginning when it was in the middle of the arc.
Yeah, and they would have just like mid-season arc, like they'd have like 5-episode arcs and stuff like that. So, I guess it became less of an issue when things like streaming and even like DVRs became a thing, because it was a lot easier to not miss an episode.
Oh yeah.
Before it was just like, although I used to record episodes, especially of like, the Zelda cartoon. I used to record those on VHS.
Yeah, well, I think it was also easier for me because X-Men, by the time like I remember it, right? So like by the time I would have started seeing the older episodes, the series was already like halfway over, because I think it like ended in 97. But like the series is already halfway over. I'm watching mostly reruns that come on like daytime TV before the next one comes on. So I'm like catching up through reruns, but I'm watching it almost in the way that you would binge something, because Cartoon Network or whatever channel has it on would have like a block where you get to watch like 4 or 5 episodes in a row. And it's like, oh, this is a pretty good way to experience this show that is still technically still running.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. What Josh was saying is that, what happens if you end a season on a cliffhanger and then they cancel the show?
Yeah.
That's always a... Yeah, that's why it's nice to just have single season arcs and be like, you can sort of foreshadow some stuff on the next season, but to end it on a genuine cliffhanger...
Yeah, unless...
That's dangerous.
You already have a confirmation for how many seasons you have, right? So like Cobra Kai is a good example. When they got picked back up by Netflix, after the first season that Netflix ordered was successful, they basically just gave them the 3-season contract to finish off the show. So if they want to finish seasons 4 or 5 on a cliffhanger, they can, because they know they're going to end on 6 anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently found out that when Star Trek Next Generation, I don't remember what season, maybe season 3 or something like that, they ended that on a cliffhanger where Riker was saying to fire on the Borg ship where Picard was.
Yeah.
After he was captured by the Borg. They didn't know if they were going to have another season, and they didn't
That's such
know.
a risky move.
I know, and they didn't know, even if they did, how they were going to end it, because I guess there were some contracts that were up and stuff like that, and so they might have killed off Picard if Patrick Stewart hadn't agreed to keep going and stuff like that. They didn't know how they were going to resolve the cliffhanger until they did.
That would have been a good way to get rid of him, though. Because then, Riker just becomes captain of the ship.
Yeah.
And, honestly, I would have still watched it.
favorite.
I liked Picard. And I like Stewart's portrayal. He's a good character. But I actually think if, the rest of the series was Riker in charge, there's certain things I might have enjoyed about that more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's got to be the best way to, the best season-ending cliffhanger. Just ended on Mr. Worf, fire. And then it's just what happens? That was great.
Well, I think that's also why that was another one where I think I missed a lot of the experience with it, having to watch it on reruns, right? But that would have been a great experience to be following. And rewatching through it, the experience isn't as good because you can literally just watch the next episode after it, and there's not as much tension.
Yeah, when that show was on, at least for, I don't know, at least one season, I don't remember exactly, but there was a period of time where I actually basically had a watch party with some friends of mine in high school. And whenever, I was in high school at the time. And every single new episode, we'd all get together physically. This was, pre-internet.
Yeah.
We'd all get together at somebody's house and watch the next episode together. And
that's how you had to do it.
We had no idea what was going to happen. It was fantastic. So.
Hey, it could be worse.
That was...
You could be Firefly, who ended your only season on a setup for season 2, and then the only way you continue it is a movie that you get 2 years after your show was canceled.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of glad I was never a Firefly fan.
I liked it. I just could never watch it live. And it was the time that it was on, right? I think when it was running, I was often going to church on Wednesday nights because Wednesday night Bible study is a thing that people do. Apparently still. I didn't know that. I figured that would have died at some point in time. But it came on when I would go off to Bible study. So occasionally I'd see a rerun. I thought there were way more episodes than there actually was because of that. It's oh no, there's only a single season. And I kind of somewhat regret not getting into it because I went back and I binged the whole thing. I think it was around the time Serenity came out. There was a marathon on TV. So I caught it 2 years after it ended. I was man, this show is great. I wish I had time to watch it when it was new. Maybe if more people had time to watch it when it was new because it didn't come on during Wednesday night Bible study, a thing that a good majority of the nation did at that time, that show would have gotten more viewers and not get canceled.
Yeah. That was a bad idea. I had a friend in college who went to, I don't think it was Bible study. I mean, he just called it church. He went to church every Wednesday. And
everybody
Sunday.
has a different thing they do. A lot of people, it is Bible study specifically. You go there, everybody splits into groups based on ages or sex or whatever. And then in your small group, you read the Bible and stuff. Which is weird because I know for most of history, that is what church is splitting up into smaller groups. Maybe somebody give a sermon, but most of church is you reading with your peers and studying the scripture for both Judaism and Christianity alike. And then somewhere along the way, it kind of veered off into these huge gatherings where the sermon is the big thing.
Yeah, that was also the guy who would always show up on Ash Wednesday with a
Yeah.
ash cross on his forehead.
Yeah, I think the other problem was
little
that
dirt on
Firefly
your-
just wasn't good enough to kill the Bible study, right? Because then there was
Right.
another show that came out where there were people who were skipping it just to watch it, and that was Lost, right? And Lost was so
No.
popular, and it was the same day,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was Wednesday nights that people were just like choosing not to go to Bible study or church or whatever
Yeah.
because it's like I'd rather watch Lost. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't care for this show, but you do you.
Yeah. Yeah, funny. I was watching Alias. It was weird. Like I feel like maybe they did this on purpose. They kind of staggered the shows,
Yeah.
and so basically, once I finished watching Alias, I'd flip over, and they're like, "What is this show, Lost?" And you could watch like the last 10 minutes of the episode. Like it ended a little bit late.
Oh no, they did that on
And so
purpose.
Yeah.
And the reason they did that is because it's just knowing your marketing competition. You don't want to be competing
Mm-hmm.
against something as big or bigger in the same time slot. It's soaps used to do this. My mom had like two that she would watch. Also, hey Buck, she would have two that she would watch. She'd watch General Hospital and Days of Our Lives, which came on back to back on two different channels because they didn't want to be competing
Mm-hmm.
directly with each other.
Yeah, well, it worked on me because after just watching like the last 10 minutes of episodes for, just like 2 or 3 episodes, I was like, what the heck this is crazy. What the heck's going on? And this was after season 1. So basically between seasons 1 and 2, I caught up on season 1, found out what the heck, because I guess they had it on reruns or something.
Yeah.
And then finally caught up. And then by season 2, I think they may have switched it to a different night so it didn't overlap Alias anymore. But yeah.
My dad's
That's what got me
watching Lost
interested
right
in
now.
Lost.
It's probably his 10th
Does he
lap,
know?
if I had to guess.
Has he seen it
Yeah,
all the way through
yeah.
before?
Yeah, like
Oh,
I said,
okay.
this is probably his 10th lap. He's
Yeah.
seen it multiple times. It's one of like his fallback shows. It's like, I've got nothing to watch. Let me just put Lost on again and watch it all the way.
Yeah,
through.
I've been rewatching Arrested Development,
Oh, that's a good
and
one. It's a short one too, even
I
with
feel
the added
like-
seasons.
yeah, I think I never actually watched the last season because I'm not recognizing any of it, and it's unfortunately not very
Well,
good.
I think what was it? It had like what I think 3 seasons originally, because I think season 4 is when it came back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm trying to remember. There was a big gap because they were basically canceled,
Yeah.
and then Netflix picked it up years later. many
Yeah, because
years
Michael Cera wanted to continue it, and at this point in his life, he's basically a producer. He backs a lot of the stuff that he wants to do, and he got everybody back on it. So I guess Netflix said, "Yeah,
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because they make jokes about all the kids in particular obviously are
old."
noticeably older.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because Steve Holt comes back and he's like, man, that guy gained a lot of weight, and
Yeah.
because he was like the most popular kid in school. He was like the cool kid.
Well, I think Michael Cera was still in high school when the show ended, and it came
Yeah.
back post Scott Pilgrim, so he's got to be like in his mid to
4 or
late
5.
20s by the time that.
Yeah. Well, wasn't that long, was it? I feel like
I
it's
think
like
it was a
5
couple-
years in between.
Yeah, and well, because Scott
years.
Pilgrim was 2010, and he was already like I think 21 or whatever in that movie. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, he's already in his mid 20s by the time.
Yeah. Oh, I know. So they did at one point. They did a like a supposed flashback,
Yep.
but it wasn't using like the old footage. They used the current characters, and they made a comment about how George Michael had seemingly aged from all the stress or something like that.
Yeah.
Like they tried to explain why he looked so much older in the flashback.
I like that type of like that's the type of meta humor I enjoy, right? Because it is funny. It's self-aware. Everybody's in on the joke too. That stuff's fine. It's
Yeah.
like when you watch a YouTube sketch and it's like, well, we don't actually have footage of us when we're younger, so they just like dress up in clothes you would think little kids would wear and pretend that they're like 10 for some reason.
Yeah. And then of course the the narrator being Ron Howard, and Ron Howard is a character in the show in season 4 at least. And yeah, there's a lot of self-deprecating humor. So anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of old things that are coming back years later, somewhat of a segue, 14 years after the game came out, the producer behind one of Final Fantasy's most obscure spin-offs says that to fans, a new chapter will arrive one day. So I believe we're talking about Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which celebrated its 20th anniversary earlier this year. They even made a anniversary edition of the game late last year. I've played it. I enjoy it. I have it on Switch. It's got cross-platform play. Anybody can play it with each other, regardless of what system it's on, because it has like a DS or mobile-style friend code you can share with people. But the producer of the game, what's his name? Akitoshi Kawazu came out and he's like, personally, I feel regret for not being able to satisfy fans who have been holding out hope for a new Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles game. And while there's so much I'd like to do, I just can't find the time to do it all. I know the characters deserve to shine again, yet I've been unable to provide them with another adventure. But he's telling people to hold out hope, because there will be another one someday. What that someday means, we have no idea. It could be next year. It could come around the 25th anniversary. It could come around the 30th anniversary. Who on earth knows? It is interesting that he still definitely wants to make another one. And that's just a complication that we know is all too common in the gaming industry, where it's not just whether you want to do something, it's whether your publisher wants you to do something too, because that's the money's got to come from somewhere. Which is why I think anybody who wants to see another Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles should buy the HD version. I think that's the best way to send a note to Square that another Crystal Chronicles should be made. I've done my part. I've bought the game. I have a lot of fun with it. But I know a lot of people who had it on GameCube that said they didn't want to buy the remake because they already have it on GameCube. They want a new game. And I'm just thinking, well, if you don't buy this one, you probably won't get a new game. Why would Square think they should fund a new game if this HD port on modern systems isn't popular enough? Like, then they'd think, well, obviously nobody's going to buy the new game either.
Yep. So I'm hoping that. Do you know how well the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters did?
I do not. I just know that I have a nosebleed.
Oh.
I should go get something for that.
You're looking at your finger. Okay.
Yeah. Because I wiped my nose and there's like blood on it. Yeah. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Go take care of that. I think I can see it now. Anyway, I was going to say, I was wondering how well the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters did, and I hope that the new HD 2D remake of Dragon Quest III does well, because I really want them to redo Dragon Quest 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 as well. Timothy Olson's here, says, "What up? How y'all doing?" I don't know. Oh, by the way, Timothy, I just saw somebody linked to your campaign on, I believe, Fund My Comic, and today's payday for me, so I'm gonna go. Go back. Hey. Cool.
Yeah, I'm just gonna sit here with this in my nose. I'm used to it.
Yeah, I was just saying, I hope that and related to what you were saying, I hope like the new remake of Dragon Quest III does really, really well.
Oh, I do too.
So
I love that they're calling it their HD 2D style, the Octopath stuff. I love the way it looks. Even for me, sometimes I think Octopath, as beautiful as it is, it's not saturated enough. Now, part of that is because they're trying to go with the look they wanted from, like, say, Final Fantasy VI, which is a very dreary colored game compared to the rest of the series, and it does fit the theme of Octopath. But just looking at the trailer they had for Dragon Quest III, it's so bright and vivid like Dragon Quest III was, and it looks beautiful because of it. I'm definitely getting it, and I want it to do very well.
If I recall correctly, I think Dragon Quest III had like a two worlds kind of a thing, kind of like Final Fantasy VI.
Don't remember?
Yeah, so they may switch to that more muted tones when you.
Well,
go
that's
to
fine for the
dark
background,
world.
but I think the sprites are just going to be the same regardless. So
Yeah, I guess so.
yeah,
Maybe. Well, it'll be interesting to see how they handle the switch from light world to dark world or whatever I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, my memory of 3 is very, very bad. I think of the original 4, it's the one I've played the least.
Yeah, me too.
I used to have Dragon Warrior 4, because that's what we used to call it, on NES, so that's probably the one I've played the most. Probably 2 is the one that I've played the most after that, and then 1. I think the last time I experienced 3, did you do it? You did a playthrough of 3, right?
No, not all the way through.
Yeah, but I think...
no, I did a playthrough of 2.
Yeah, but did you start 3? Because I think...
Maybe.
If you did, that's probably the last time I experienced it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the sort of the remake of 3. I think there was a remake. Yeah, I have it on Switch. But yeah, I've only played it.
Yeah.
And then I think that's the most I've ever played. It was like, a couple hours worth, and that's it. I never actually got. The only reason I even know any part of it, like the fact that I think there are two worlds, is that I read the whole spread on Nintendo Power when it first came out.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that looks cool, and then I never played it. I don't remember why. Probably some other game that.
The funny part is, at least in Japan, which Dragon Quest was always more popular in Japan than it was here, 3 is like the most popular of all the Dragon Quest games. It's the one that people have always been asking for a remake nonstop. It's that and like 5, I think it comes after that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
yeah,
wow, I can't believe that's the most popular of all of them.
Yeah, it's a little strange because 3 is very different. Like you can recruit monsters to your party, or I think you create your party.
Yeah.
It says I can't remember. I think you create your party out of like characters that you can basically roll. It's more role playing because you can roll your new characters and you can choose their classes and all that stuff.
Like I said, my memory of 3 is very bad. Well, I'm excited because the way it looks and everything, it'll probably be the first time that I actually play the game intent enough that I will remember the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and 5, you're right, is sort of is the most popular of the Zenithian series of 4, 5, and 6, and that's the one that they based the latest Netflix movie after.
Yeah,
it's basically just Dragon Quest V. So. Timothy says, change of topic here for a sec, but does anyone remember the TMNT Hostess Pie commercials? Did anyone ever think the line "fresh from the sewer" was a mistake?
I have no recollection of this thing whatsoever.
Me neither, but that does sound disgusting. I don't know where that. He must have been thinking about it. I don't know where that topic came up. But, yeah.
Oh.
Well, anyway.
I don't know. You were asking how well the Pixel remasters did before that, and I actually don't know the data on it. I think because it's really hard to get data on digital sales, right, across the board. I think the only thing we could scroll for that would be Steam. Right, we'd have to look at Steam user count for like who owns it. because we're not going to get the sales for Switch, PlayStation, or any. I think Xbox has it too, for any of those three, because it's 100% digital. There's no physical copy of the Pixel remasters. It's all of whatever Square's reporting would be otherwise, if they've even reported it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just the dilemma we're in when it comes to the increasingly digital world for games, is that it's going to be trickier and trickier to actually find the sales numbers, which means companies that may not be doing so hot can kind of like hide it and almost sell their sales better than they would be able to otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's a story that's new for me,
Okay.
but I don't know if it's. I imagine this was sort of figured out a few years ago. But do you remember the glitch in Breath of the Wild where you take Link to the Bridge of Hylia, and if you crawl into this sort of hole in the wall where they had kind of a break in the corner of one of the towers, and if you stood like right there, the cell shading would completely disappear, and you could basically see sort of Link's original 3D model, and it looked kind of like it was kind of a plastically looking 3D model. Do you remember that at all?
No, this is 100%
Really?
new to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, I've seen
This
what
was
his model
discovered-
looks like, but that's only because after people started emulating it, they just started ripping the models out of there, and you could see what it looks like without
Yeah.
the shading.
Right. Well, in game, this was a glitch that was discovered fairly early on. If you stood at a certain place, like sort of inside one of the towers of the Bridge of Hylia, the cell shading would disappear from his face. And also things like if you held up one of the glowing bombs that he has, the glowing would disappear. It would, instead of being bright blue, it would kind of be a black color. And this was a mystery, like what, and like nowhere else. Like there were other places where you could sort of stand inside of a wall and have similar shadowing, but this never happened anywhere else. Turns out, number one, it did happen. Some people found some other obscure locations.
Was it an
where this
issue with
happened.
the wraparound lighting that caused it to disable, or?
Not exactly. The wraparound lighting? What does that mean?
Okay, so it's the way the cell shading is done in those games. Is it still has like a shader like you would with any lighting source, right? So the lighting actually has to wrap around whatever the source is to project a shadow.
Right.
But then they have like an algorithm in there that tells it where the lighting should cut off, so it gets a hard edge instead of a blended. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not due to that, but it is
Okay.
due to the multi-pass way that they do the lighting. So I actually watched this whole video. There's like 9 passes that they have to do on every frame, every pixel, to sort of do the lighting the way they do in the game. And one of the later passes applies what's called a decal.
Okay.
So so if you've got like a wall with a material applied to it, and you want to give that some more detail, like you want to give part of the wall a little bit of different discoloring, like it's faded or looks like it's been hit with a bomb or just a crack, you put a decal on it that kind of applies this additional little bit of graphics to just give it some interest. Some interesting details.
I could imagine
Apparently
they
what-
have so many passes though, just because like
Oh yeah.
there's always like the sun is a main
'Cause, like-
lighting source, but anywhere you are, there's a main lighting source. But then there's also tons of other things that reflect and change the lighting. There's tons of like ambient inclusion, like from that bomb glow and stuff. Like, yeah. It's more complicated than when they did it with Wind Waker, where they only needed a primary lighting source at any point in time, and then they just needed to have an algorithm that tells it when the lighting stops wrapping around to get a hard edge on things. It was like much simpler. Than
Yeah, plus different things like Link and all of the characters have the cell shading, but things like backgrounds, mountains, and trees and things like that don't actually have cell shading.
They almost get like that anime look of where like the backgrounds are painted, but the characters are.
Yeah. So this decal thing, what they figure happened. So and the decal, it's kind of related to some of the transparency that they also do, because like one of the passes is to deal with water.
Yeah.
Because they apply the lighting to the things under the water, and then they apply this water on top of it to give it this additional translucency look. What they figure is with decals, basically, if they put that on there, it kind of removes all of the previous shading that had been under there.
Oh, okay.
And what they figure is that when they initially applied the decal to this particular wall, it was probably just a wall, like a corner, like that. And then later they
use
decided,
like a mask
just
or something to get rid of it.
Well, they probably later like cut out this divot that you can actually stand in, and they forgot to remove or to redo the decal. So the decal comes to a point like this, but there's a gap underneath it where you can stand. So when you're behind it, it removes all the cell shading when you're behind that.
See, I would have figured that like they just put a mask there, right? To like
that's basically what it
get
is.
rid of it, right? And it's like, well, the lighting just doesn't know how to interact with the mask once you're inside of there,
Yeah, it's basically like this additional filter.
Yeah.
That they put on there and forgot to account for the little hole that you can stand in. And one of the other things that they noticed was that the other areas where this happens, they figured this probably happened all the time and they fixed it and they just missed this one spot. Other areas where this happens more often is actually in Hyrule Castle. And they figure that was probably one of the last areas that they created in the game or finalized, and they just didn't have as much time to test.
Yeah.
And so there was a bit more of that kind of weirdness happening in the castle because it was just not tested as thoroughly.
That makes sense.
I thought that was an interesting discovery that, years later they finally figured out why this weirdness was happening. So. And I guess it was never patched out. They figured, doesn't break anything really. So
yeah, I think stuff like that should be left in games if it doesn't actually harm anything, because that's one of the cool things about old games. You can still go pick up a game on the N64, and everything that was wrong with that game, you can appreciate like it was the first time.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Want to hear some bad things?
Sure.
Yeah.
Always.
So Xbox introduced a new 8-strike anti-toxicity system that pretty much nobody likes.
8?
So like instead of 3 strikes, you get 8 strikes and you're out, which is pretty lenient, but also not, because where is the hard part? It's pretty much like it's a demerit system, so you get up to 8 demerits, and then you're like gone for good or something like that.
Do they tell you when you get these strikes?
Yes, you do get a notification, and things, it's not like straight up like you're fine until the 8th strike. Things get progressively worse, and I think this is what people don't like about it. So if you received 2 strikes, you'll be suspended from the platform for 1 day. So they're it's almost like Twitch's system where they say, I got banned from Twitch, when really you're just not allowed to stream for like 2 weeks. Which will hurt your wallet if your income's a streamer, but you'll be back in 2 weeks, whatever, So after 4 strikes, though, it's a whole week. And players who have like a total of 8 strikes will be suspended from Xbox's social features like messaging, parties, party chat, multiplayer, for at least 1 year of enforcement date. So you still have to pay for online if you want certain features, but you can't use any of the social parts. So like you could play with people, but you can't use like the in-game chat or anything like that. It's just a block on you.
Is that controlled? I mean, what if a game developer has an in-game chat in their game, and they're just like, screw it.
I think
You
that
can
would
do whatever you want.
depend on whether the developer is running it off of their own servers or if they're using Xbox Live. Because I think any game that doesn't have its own server system, the voice chat run through Xbox's servers are also ran through Xbox Live, so they can disable that from there. If you have like MMOs don't have their own servers, but something with crossplay, like I think Fortnite has crossplay, or Rocket League. If you're something like that and you're hosting it on your own servers, you probably can skirt past that. I don't think Xbox has any control over the voice comms over there, because you'd have to be able to talk between the different services.
Yeah. You know, okay, so it sounds fair to me, but
Yeah, it doesn't sound that bad. I think
question-
people are freaking out about it more. It just, what is
Yeah.
enforcement? Like, what's toxicity, right?
right, that's the question:
Yeah.
is it going to be applied evenly, or who gets to decide? That's always the question.
Well, it's
It's
definitely
like all of
unevenly.
these things, yeah, all of
Because
these
it-
things sound fair on the surface, but then when
Yes.
it comes to reality,
Well, I do have some things on here. So certain violations will apply more strikes to account than others, as expected. I can understand like certain things like a death threat. That honestly, you should probably just call the cops on that if you have a actual recording of somebody doing a death threat. But if you want to ban somebody from live service for a death threat because they will probably make more on people in the future, then sure, go ahead. I see no problem with that. But the things that they have, you might get 1 strike for cheating, but you could get up to like 3 strikes for hate speech. And each strike will be on your record like a driver's license for 6 months.
yeah. So one strike
Yeah.
for something that actually affects other
Gameplay.
players.
Yeah.
And 3 strikes for something that actually doesn't affect anybody.
Yeah.
You know, anyone can just ignore.
Yeah, yeah. Or even like, I guess the way the toxicity would work too, if you just said like a swear at somebody toxically, right? Like that would maybe be 1 strike, but if it became a slur, if you said a slur instead, that's automatically 3.
Yeah.
Even if it was like kind of harmless compared to the other thing that you said before.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, even things like death threats, it's like, okay, saying something, especially like in the heat of the moment, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know, I hope you die in a fire or something like that. That's not a death threat, but people
No,
just call it.
No, but you do
Yeah.
get like little kids who'd be like, I'm gonna come over to your house and fucking kill your mom or something like that. Like people do say
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
That's
that's
an
a death
actual threat. Yeah.
Yeah, it may not even be credible, but
Yeah, there's
saying,
no
"I'm
backing
going
to the
do
threat.
this." Yeah, I'm going to do this. I get it.
That happens
Yeah,
all the
that's not-
time.
Yeah, that's not something that you would call the cops for, but I could see some being
Yeah.
put in time out for that. I get it.
If somebody sends you your IP address in a DM, I could see that one too. Because having somebody's IP address, unless you're on a VPN and they basically just sent you the IP for the virtual network you're on, and then you can laugh at them. But sending somebody their IP address, if they're not on a VPN, is one step closer to actually knowing where they are, because you can triangulate their general location from that.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's fair for a company like that to police that stuff to some degree, but they never do it fairly. That's the problem. Yeah, their own
Luckily,
subjective.
right now it does look like it's only up to 1 year suspension, because Microsoft, I think they're kind of smart. They don't want to kick anybody from their network permanently, because that's how they make money. Like PlayStation, who has burned people permanently, and then they find out it's like, well, you know what happens when you burn somebody permanently? They just scrap their old account and they start a new one just from scratch, you know?
Yeah. And use a VPN to mask their IP address and stuff like that.
Well, that's the funny thing, is a lot of times they don't do IP bans, which is something you see more common on like PC gaming and stuff, because they know how things work. Console games, or at least the companies that run the consoles, are so naive when it comes to like what people do, that they don't even notice sometimes that another user on the same network is actually just the same guy. They're like, no, it's just somebody else in the house with them. Why would we ban them too? It's like, the guy lives by himself. The accounts have basically the same name.
Yeah. Well, and ironically, I would think it's harder to use a VPN on a console.
It is, because you have to switch it on your router itself.
Yeah. You'd have to have a VPN that applies on the router. Weirdly. But, all right. I don't know. I at this point, I don't think this is something to get upset about. It's just normal business as usual. Like you said, it seems fairer than most systems.
That's my thing, is people are flipping out about it. And I guess if you're used to having no enforcement whatsoever, it is kind of worth flipping out on it. I'm like, the system could be even more fair than this. I think there are some things where they're a little over the line on, but not enough to complain about necessarily. But compared to like PlayStation,
I mean, surely,
right? PlayStations will just fucking nuke you. They don't even give a shit, you know?
Yeah. And I guess there's probably a what do you call it? An appeal system, but again,
they haven't mentioned that. So that's actually the one thing that would make or break whether I would consider it fair. And it's the fact that they didn't mention an appeal system, where I said it could be more fair. There could be one. They just did not mention it all in the kind of like press release for it.
Yeah, because the problem, like I think a big problem that the YouTube has is like they either their reviewers are not English speakers and they don't understand things like jokes and metaphors and that sort of thing, or I don't know, or they're just stupid people and don't understand those things, or they don't actually do the reviews, because it seems like I've seen people appeal things that just get rejected within seconds.
Well, I like this one thing that this one guy said. He's got the timing wrong because it's every 6 months. But he's like, if I'm reading this correctly, it sounds like I can call someone a fucking cunt every 4 months and only receive 24-hour ban. Very reasonable.
Yeah. Kind of does sound reasonable.
Yeah. So the way they're saying it, though, is like it's supposed to be like a driver's license, right? Like the way demerits and stuff work.
Yeah.
Now, that should mean there is an appeal, because you can appeal a strike on your driver's license by going to court over whatever caused the strike. Mm-hmm. And if the judge is like, oh, you shouldn't have had this, you're not going to be held liable, you won't get that strike. Right. Yeah. So there's got to be some system there.
Yeah, I almost wish, I imagine this would be cost prohibitive, but I almost wish, like, when there's an appeal on things like this, whether it's Xbox or YouTube or whatever, that you have to get on a Zoom call or something with a human being, see their face, and make your case to their face.
Well, it'd be easy. You don't even need a Zoom call, right? If you have an Xbox, this is Xbox, you can just use the Xbox party chat, right? And they can pull everybody up. Yeah.
As long as it's a voice chat. I don't want to see it. Preferably a video chat. Because I'm like, when they reject an appeal in 10 seconds, it's like, that's a fucking AI.
Space, right? We can't we can't force people who hide anonymously behind usernames to get onto a video chat, but we might be able to force them into a party chat.
Have that option.
Yeah.
At least have the option where you can say, well, you can appeal via, automated text message, and chances are it'll just get rejected by a computer.
Yeah, but I want to face my accuser.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think it's all AI.
Voice chat. Yeah.
I don't think unless there is an appeal system, and maybe on appeal a human will go over it, but I don't think there is any human looking at this stuff, because we all know they record your voice calls. They've been doing that for, I think they said 3 years ago that they were going to start like actively recording the party chat calls and stuff like that to monitor it. And it's like, oh, I can't even slur to my own friends who are okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, like we get due process when it comes to the law, things like getting points on your license, but you get no guaranteed due process when it comes to these companies enforcing terms of service.
Yeah, I would laugh so hard though, because it's like, it's Microsoft, right? So if you did get into some type of appeal with like your accuser and some Microsoft tech guy works for Xbox who's mediating the call between you, who's actually having to go over the appeal, you're going to hear the other guy, what's on Metal Snow? I had a nosebleed in the middle of the show. It's a toilet paper. Yeah, but you're like in the middle of the call and all of a sudden you hear, okay, so I need you to go back over the thing that you're like, it's just some random guy from like India just like suddenly talking. He's like, God damn it, Microsoft.
Yeah, they should have judges that you can stand in front of.
Yeah.
Hey, Sketchbook, how's it going? Yeah, but like I said, of course they'll say it's cost prohibitive, but the reality is, well, I guess that's probably the reality.
Oh yeah, no, that's always the reality. They would come up with some other excuse when the reality is actually that is cost prohibitive.
Yeah, I mean that's the best excuse to say.
It is.
Like, well, but I almost feel like hate to say there should be regulations, but it should be like a internet bill of rights where you get to have due process with these things. But
yeah,
I don't know what that would do as far as making games cost even more, or
no, it wouldn't make the games cost more. What they would do is they would just make the Xbox Live service cost more.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's been pretty stable cost since I think the 360 era. So if I would not be, I don't even pay for it, but if I did, right, looking at the cost, I wouldn't be against them raising the price of it. I'll take Nintendo for example too, right? When I actually use the service, I wouldn't be against Nintendo raising the price of the service if it meant they were actually adding things to it that were beneficial to the consumer. I'd pay more. So
you should have an option of having a premium account for extra money that gives you live appeals.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe that would be. Maybe people would say, "Oh, well, that's catering to more wealthy people." That they gives us a two tier justice system. But I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's not an actual legal justice system, so
right.
If anything, you just be like everybody's on the same account, and just be like, you have to microtransaction. You have to actually pay to file your appeal. Right, like you have to pay to file in court, right? It's like just $5 to file an appeal, because the thing is, most people I'm not gonna pay $5 just to lose my appeal anyway.
Yeah,
right. If they actually deserve it, people are like, I'm not gonna go and lose $5 just to stand in front of somebody for like half an hour.
that would be a good idea to say, okay, you can have a live appeal. You're essentially paying like the court costs, the official Xbox court. Say,
what you're paying is the overtime for this tech, basically, right? The added overtime. Here's the $5 that would be on it.
Yeah, I would guess it would be more than
it
5,
would be, but
especially
being generous to the consumer here.
Yeah, I mean, it would be $5 if they spread it out over everyone. But if you're going to pay on a appeal by appeal basis, I would imagine it'd be $20 or even $50 or something. Like when I went to court.
Oh yeah.
And had my trespassing bullshit charge basically completely revoked and doesn't exist anymore, it still cost me like $150 just for the court costs to show up in front of the judge and tell him it was bullshit. So,
Sketchbook wants to know how you're doing in Arizona.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
It's not as hot as it was. It's not 119 anymore.
Oh, we're below 100 here today. I was
nice.
Really surprised. But no, I agree. Like I'm exaggerating, but I think 5 is fair for the consumer, right? Especially since this isn't an actual court. And no, it wouldn't even cover the overtime. If you actually were taking one of their techs and what they get paid and consider what like overtime would be for them, right? They get paid like.
Well, it wouldn't be overtime.
No, it wouldn't. No, it's their actual job.
Their regular time.
I was joking by saying you're paying for their overtime.
Yeah.
But they get paid like, just the call-in texts are like $25 an hour. It's ridiculous. Sitting there just to answer people's calls all day.
I would imagine you'd have to have somebody who speaks English, preferably, and a little bit higher paid if they're going to do these, individual appeals to your face and all that.
Trespassing? You were stalking someone? No. It was back when you got kicked out of your old apartment, right?
Yeah. I went back with permission from somebody at my apartment complex to go in and get my stuff because I still hadn't finished moving out. And so I went in with permission, but then I guess some other person was on duty that day and claimed that I didn't have permission and called the fucking cops on me. And so, yeah, went to court, basically showed them, I think I had it in writing, that I was allowed to get my stuff out of my own apartment. And the judge was like, yeah, this is dismissed or whatever. Just pay $150 court fee.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, we actually got trespassed on the house that I grew up in. I lived in that house for like 12 years straight. And when we finally got kicked out, almost all of our stuff was spread out on the lawn, right? So we had to try to get a moving truck, get it in storage as fast as possible. But there were some things, because they were very lazy, I guess, whatever the movers or whoever was hired to take our stuff out of the house and throw it on the lawn by the landlord. Some of the stuff were just in there, and we wanted it. Like, we could see it through the windows, and we're like, fuck it. He might have locked us out of the house, but he doesn't know us that we've been able to get into this place from multiple like windows or doors for years if we needed to. So we just went right back in, took all the stuff that was left in that we wanted, and then dipped.
Yeah, mine, they didn't even lock it. I mean, they specifically left it unlocked for me to go in and get my stuff.
Yeah, no, you didn't actually trespass. They just, for some reason, tried to pin you with it. Yeah.
And what's funny is, like, when I first went in, like when I basically got arrested, I went in front of a judge initially, and it looked like I had to, go to court and get sentenced and all this bullshit. Then when I got, and it was very like, I don't know, just had a feeling of, oh, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You're going to go to jail for a long time and blah, 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 blah. Well, I went in for the court date with an attorney. That was the key. An attorney from a law firm.
Yeah.
And I basically just kept my mouth shut and let the attorney do the talking. And by the end, it was like, dismissed. I was like, that was the key. So.
Oh, yeah. Get a professional.
It's like, yeah, you assholes don't know who you're messing with. I mean, I'm not wealthy by any stretch, but I can afford an attorney. And so I don't think they thought that I could even afford an attorney.
Yeah.
Like, yep.
I think they assume that of a lot of people who live in apartments. They're like, well, if you could afford an attorney, you'd probably have a house or a condo or something.
Or I wouldn't, wouldn't have missed the one fucking payment that got evicted in the first place. I was like, well, yeah, you don't know my circumstances.
I can't afford an attorney. I just have like one or two emergency calls that I can pull a favor like once or twice. That's it. And like, I'm saving those for a really rainy day.
Oh yeah. I really wish that I ended up paying the attorney a lot more than I paid the court. But and I don't want to have to do that again, but where push comes to shove, I can hire an attorney for like one court, appearance.
I think I'm fine now.
But yeah, speaking of weather, wow, it is 110 today, but next week it's going to rain, or actually this weekend, and it's getting down to 92. It's crazy. It's like a cold snap.
Yeah.
Might freeze to death.
Actually, who was it? It's only 91 here today, which is fucking fantastic. But who is it? It's that one channel that does the weather. Ryan Hall, y'all love that channel. He was talking about how the Jetstream is pulling some stuff over this month, and it's going to be very crazy weather. Nice for us, but if you happen to be like right in the path of where the two fronts are crossing, which is like it's going from somewhere around Minnesota down, curving towards like South Carolina. If you're like in that curve, you're gonna be fucked with weather. So luckily, neither of us are in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe it's actually going to rain. Like the last time they said it was going to rain, it was like literally a fine mist
Yeah.
for like 30 minutes, and that was it. It was like no actual rain.
Yeah, and that
But
mist
yeah.
is like it sucks, right? It's not it breaks the humidity, but there's no humidity where you are anyway, so it's just like
Yeah.
hot water spraying through the air.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel good.
Yeah.
But this actually looks like an actual, like, well, it still says only 50%, but like for 3 days in a row. So chances
Yeah.
are we're actually going to get rain.
It's like, man, it's like that at Six Flags, right? Where I'm sure Disney or any theme park you go to is like that too. But you'll be at Six Flags here. It'll be 110 degrees outside. And they'll have like these misters on that you could go under. And it's like, if it was any cooler, if it was like in the 90s, these misters would be cool. But because they're running through hoses that are suspended in this hot air, the water's actually warm. And you're like, I don't know if I want to be under this water that's only slightly cooler than the air or not under this warm water misting in my face.
Yeah. We have, it seems like at all the like movie theaters in the front, they have water misting down, but it's like under the roof.
Yeah.
So it
So
actually
it doesn't
feels
have
kind
the
of
sun
cool.
like actually just beating on it all
Right.
the time. Yeah.
Right. It's actually genuine, cool water kind of misting in your face.
Yeah, because it's like, does the water originate underground where the pipes are here? Yes, but it's been in a hose that's like suspended through the air for at least like 10 to 20 feet now. So the sun's just like beating on it the whole time that it's like traveling.
Yep. Warms up pretty fast.
Well, especially because it's only mist, right? So it's not like like a lot of water that's in the air. So it's not like a lot of water is running through the hose. It sits there and pushes the water out through pressure. So most of that water is actually sitting in that hose for whole minutes before it even comes out and hits you.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to convince me. I believe you.
No, it's for the audience, man. Like there's people. I'm sure Sketchbook knows too because he's not too far from where I am, just a little further south, I think. But it's like there are people in cooler environments that just don't know. They just don't. You have to like paint a picture for them.
Yeah.
Well,
Did you
last thing.
see? Oh, go ahead.
This is a follow-up to something that we were talking about last year and even somewhat earlier this year. And people have been asking, when's Netflix actually going to start streaming games, right? They've been doing games like on the phone and stuff. Well, they're now doing it. They are actually pulling the Stadia. Netflix can stream games to your TV and computer. It was only a matter of time. It's a limited beta meant to test the game streaming technology and controller. The controller being a smartphone that is hooked up to your network. It uses your smartphone screen. It's got like a touch joystick, like a lot of phone games do. That's big. It takes up the whole phone. And it's got an A/B X and Y, with the A being super big. Even the layout of the buttons, it's kind of like if you're playing something like Genshin Impact, where there's like one big button and the other three are put around it. And you can just play games. Oxenfree, one of the games that they already have on phone that you could play through your system, so Netflix has the license to it, is one of the games that you'll be able to stream and demo if you're in the limited beta. But basically, I think any of the phone games that they have should be on the system, and you'll be streaming it.
How do you do it? I don't even. I'm on Netflix. I don't even see.
Well, it is a
Where
limited
you go.
beta, so let me look.
Oh, okay. It's
don't know.
invitation only.
It might be invitation only. Because I'm not seeing... Usually the
There's a
articles like
storyline.
this will have a link to where you can sign up for the beta. There's no link to that here, so it might actually...
Oh,
feedback from
it says The company said today it will allow a small number of users in Canada and the UK.
Okay, so we're not even
two of its games. Yeah, it's only 2 games,
Oxenfree being
and
one
not
of
in the
it.
United States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense, though. Usually you want a beta test on smaller populations. That's why, like, Australia gets a lot of those tests, too.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we were actually making a game or an app for Wizards of the Coast. They were saying we need to basically beta test it in Canada and I think they said Indonesia. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense, too.
those are-
I've seen a lot of companies do that, and it's just like, you want a wide population of people that would possibly do it, but you don't want to be overwhelmed at the same time. So you don't want to, like, leave it open to the US. And then it's just easier if you use pre-established regions instead of trying to just, like, make your own region.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently Oxenfree and Mole Hughes Mining Adventure.
Not familiar with that one. I'm somewhat familiar with
Me neither.
Oxenfree, though, so that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever use
Well-
Netflix gaming, but it's exciting that
Yeah.
something that we knew was going to happen is finally making its way through.
Yeah, I just wonder. I mean, the thing with Netflix is they have clearly some sort of what do you call it, priority on internet.
Yeah, like they're paying
Speeds.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah,
YouTube
because
does
like
too.
I'll bring up right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'll bring up some random website when my internet's all wonky and just going really slow, and it takes forever to load. Go to Netflix, boom, can stream, no problem. Comes up for whatever 1080p video, just absolutely problem free.
Yeah.
YouTube's the same, and then you go to some other questionable site, and it's like, why won't this game thing come up? Because the
Yeah.
internet's- So maybe the gaming streaming will work better on their system.
This Joseph says, I don't think game streaming will take off. Or take. Or whatever. Yeah, he said take off.
I have my doubts.
It's not that I have my doubts. I don't think it will take off for everything. I think there's certain things that might. Definitely anything that's like low data could, you could effectively stream an NES game and never have any issues with it, right? Because it's based off of going to be latency. It's also going to be based off of like how much information has to go through at any point in time. Certain games are probably
But, like,
fine.
You're still
Yeah.
basically streaming this 1080.
That's what it's like. It's
You know,
latency is going to be a big thing too, and data. Like it's going to be both of them. It's going to depend on how many servers the company has and where they are. If they only have one server farm, if they're only off of like one of the bigger data hubs, then maybe it's going to suck because unless you live right next to it, you might just get fucked on latency wise. It doesn't matter how good your connection is. But if you're somebody who's got like a lot of micro centers everywhere, then maybe that's not a problem because they could have stuff running through the micro centers, right? I think it'll probably be easy for phone games, like certain things that we are familiar with phone games, not like the bigger ones like say Genshin or anything like that, but the type of smaller phone games that you used to be used to, things you wouldn't even mind using your phone as a controller to play on Netflix, probably wouldn't be an issue. Apparently you can use keyboard and mouse on the computer app for Netflix too, so you're not only stuck to using your phone. I do think it'll take, especially because there's a very, very casual audience that for gaming that like phone games that will overlap with it. Yeah, like Angry Birds. People play Angry Birds on their Roku with their shitty Roku remote, right? Imagine if you could play a game
'cause
like
there's
that with a better control on your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's no reaction time.
Nope.
There's no live action happening. It's just you do.
Yeah,
an
so you can play
input,
like RPGs
and
through it, no
see the
problem, right?
results. Yeah.
Some gotcha
Turn-based,
games,
yeah.
because a lot of gotcha games are RPG. You know, like Final Fantasy War: The Visions Brave Exvius. You could easily, because There is a countdown when you're playing multiplayer, but they give you 30 seconds, and you make a move like a Final Fantasy Tactics game. So it's like only one thing is ever going off at a time. You know, there's no issue there.
Yep. But like I said, I tried Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
Utter shit. And Qbert, or no, Frogger. That's what it was.
Frogger, yeah.
Frogger on the PS5 streaming, and I'm like, neither of them were remotely playable.
One of the most popular auto arenas, Raid Shadow Legends, could easily be played through it, you know?
Sure.
Classic games like Farmville or Clash of Clans could easily be played through it too. Like, there's tons of stuff that latency just would not fuck you over necessarily. So
yeah, things like what was it, Into the Breach?
Yeah,
where it's all turn based and you move your characters. Or what's that newer one from Way Forward that they just released? That the one that was delayed because of the Ukraine war.
But it's a HD remake. That's why you confused me when you said newer. The Advance Wars reboot.
Advance Wars, yeah.
1 and 2.
Isn't that a turn-based strategy game?
Yeah. It's like playing Fire Emblem. It's basically like playing Fire Emblem, but with tanks.
Right. Exactly. Well, the very last thing I was going to mention, but we don't really have to talk about it since we're at the end, was that it looked like Moist Critical has amicably ended his exclusive contract with Twitch. So.
Yeah, he will still be streaming on Twitch, but he won't be exclusive to it. He'll be doing on YouTube as well.
What if he'll try Kick?
Maybe, I don't know. That just means he can still get donations like bits and stuff. He just got demoted to like the normal partner end. He's not like one of their big contract workers. And he can get like normal partner in the same way that like an affiliate or whatever. Like he could get donations. He's just not getting paid by Twitch directly.
Yeah.
And like, that means he can get super chats on YouTube now too, because he can go over to YouTube, you know.
Like Asmongold, I don't know if he used to, but he definitely doesn't have that sort of contract with Twitch now.
Yeah.
So, and he's doing just fine. He's just not exclusively on Twitch. He can go anywhere he wants.
Yeah. Well, so I saw Charlie's video on it about half an hour after it dropped. I saw that Asmongold covered it. He did a reaction to it and gave his thoughts, but I hadn't watched the video. But the title was pretty extreme because you have to have your clickbait titles where it's like Twitch is dead. All right. Like this is the death of Twitch. And I'm like, it's not. Yeah. Twitch is dying. It has been for a while. It's killing itself. I don't think just losing Moist Critical is the death of Twitch. But he was a really big one that a lot of people watched and was a good source of revenue for him. So if they start doing this where more and more people start mutually ending their contracts, sure, I could see it spiraling into the actual death of Twitch.
Yeah, it seems like everybody is branching out. I mean, even like Baka Matai that I like to watch on Twitch. She's trying Kick and YouTube and everything else.
Yeah. I like Charlie if he's on YouTube, because I don't have Twitch open most of the time. So there are some people I watch on Twitch, but I have to be like paying attention to my phone to get the notification when they're live. So if I'm not looking at my phone, I'll miss it. YouTube though, like if I'm over here working on something, I've got YouTube on my other monitor because I'm always just like shuffling through videos in the background. So I'll get like the ping notification in the corner and I'll see that people have uploaded a video or go live. So I'll actually catch some of his stuff if he goes live on YouTube. I miss it every single time he goes live on Twitch.
Yeah, like I mean, Asmongold does not stream, as far as I know, directly to YouTube.
No,
I've never like sat there and watched him on Twitch like for more than a minute or two just to see what he's up to. All of the stuff that I watch of him is on YouTube. So.
I do watch a different OTK member on Twitch when he's live, is Tectone.
Oh.
But that's because Tectone plays a lot of the gacha games, including the MiHoYo stuff, which they don't, dead naming them HoYoverse. They don't go by MiHoYo anymore. But yeah, he does like Honkai, and he got big off of Genshin. and I'll watch him. Especially the one thing Twitch has going for it, but I hear YouTube is catching up on it, the drops. Right, there's like the Twitch drops. So I normally don't care because they're for games I don't play, but right now Honkai is doing Twitch drops. So if you like watch Honkai related streams for, I think it's 2 hours total, right? For the first hour, every 15 minutes of watching, you'll get a drop, and then you actually get like for an additional hour on top of that, a currency, like the in-game currency from a drop. So if you watch 2 hours of Honkai streaming, that ends today.
I don't even understand how that works.
So what you do is you go to the Twitch drop thing, and it'll ask you, okay, here's how you fill it out, and it'll bring you to like that's the game's site. So in this case, it's like Hoyo versus Honkai site, and it'll ask you first to link your Honkai account, which I'm already logged on my computer. Then it'll ask you to link your Twitch account, which, I'm already on it. And once those two accounts are linked, then Twitch will keep track of how long you're watching a stream that is partnered with them. So if you're watching a featured Honkai Star Rail like partner, Twitch partner, then it'll be like, okay, you watched it for 15 minutes, another 15, another 15, another 15, that extra hour afterwards. You've got all the drops, and then they'll ping the service to tell Honkai to give you your drops. And you go in game and you get it from your mail like anything else. People do it for Fortnite. They do it for like Apex. Twitch drops have been a thing for a while. I just never gave a shit about like anything they dropped. And it's like, well, I'm already watching these people for playing a game I enjoy anyway. Why not get the drops for free?
Neat.
And I've heard that YouTube is starting to work with that. I just don't know how it works with YouTube yet, but YouTube is trying to compete. It's like they got the Twitch drops, we're going to get our YouTube drops.
Yeah. Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Leave it on, yeah. Do you have to like be watching? Do you have to like click something every 15 minutes?
No.
Or does it just...
No. I could just leave it on another monitor, whatever.
Yeah.
I think there are one of two requirements, because Twitch can tell if you're watching to some degree, right?
Yeah.
You either have to, if you want to mute it, the video has to be like no other windows in front of it. It has to be like the top window on your screen, and it can tell if it's the top window on your screen. So if you have multiple screens, you could just leave it on another one. If you have it on another tab, the audio has to be playing. But as long as you're doing one of the two things that count you as viewing it, then you get it, right? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, you can just leave it up while doing something else, which I do. Like, I'll be working on one screen while I just leave it on the other.
Yeah. I mean, you can just... it counts if you bring it up on your phone, right?
Yeah, you can leave it on your phone.
On your phone.
Yeah. If you're not using your phone for anything else, you can have that up. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
But I pretty much only watch people I enjoy anyway, so like it's not a problem for me. It's like dude, like I said, I'm already watching Tectone play Honkai. I'll take the free drops,
Yeah. Is Honkai only on PC and mobile?
Yes, at the moment it is only available for those two. I think they said it was September, so it should be next month that it's coming to PS5. We don't have
PS4 as well.
And PS4, yeah, PS4. We don't have a time on if it's ever coming to Switch, but we do know they said that they're trying to get Genshin on Switch. They've been trying for a little bit. They would like that by the end of the year if possible. So if they do, Honkai probably won't be too far after that.
I would be more likely to play Genshin
if it was on Switch.
If it was on Switch.
Yeah, they've been trying. It's just about, I think it's the visuals that they need to do, right? Because the Switch can handle the data. It can handle, like, the combat. It's not very complex. Like, again, older phones can play it. But I do think it's a little visually taxing with how much is rendered. It's like Breath of the Wild plus when it comes to rendering, right?
Yeah.
And we already looked at how taxing...
I'll tell you, though... I tried playing it on a slightly older phone. I mean, I guess it was a couple years old, and couldn't get it to run at all.
I have no problem on my Samsung Galaxy 8 Edge, which is pretty old. I've had it since like 2018. So
this was like an iPhone 7, maybe or something at the time. I don't know. Anyway, works fine on my current phone.
Yeah. But like, so I mean, everything except for the graphics, I think, work perfectly fine on Switch. I think they probably just have to fine tune it to where it only stays on the low end of graphics, which you should anyway. You shouldn't give graphic options. We've complained about this before on a console. You should just, whatever the optimized graphics are for that console, have the game run at it. Lock it right there, you know. Performance.
Apparently there's even a trailer for the Switch version.
Yeah, they've been working on it for a while. It's just not out yet.
Yeah, no release date. But I mean, it came out in 2020. It shouldn't really be that difficult. I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I don't know. I do know that they've just been doing so much with the game. I think that's the problem, though, is that every time they add a new area, it's like, well, we can't have the Switch version until it can also now run the new area that we added. So they keep making it harder and harder for them to port the game because the game's so successful and they keep adding shit to the game.
So they have to time these releases. Like, they can't have a version that's behind, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have to not be cross-platform. Like, you have to have your Switch character, and it would be separate from everything else.
Yeah, so what we're hoping this year might actually be the year, because they've been building up the release of Fontaine for a while with the 4.0, and they're hoping shortly after Fontaine comes out, the Switch version will finally come out. Like, if they just have everything up to that point running on the Switch, there should be no problem.
Yeah.
Which I'm actually excited for that area. I've been slowly getting back into it. I might play Genshin again just to play that area.
Yeah. That's funny. This article is talking about Genshin Impact filling the gap between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. But this article was published in July of 2023. I'm like, what do you mean? The Tears of the Kingdom was already out, wasn't it?
Yeah. Maybe they were
talking about.
Maybe it's a retrospect. I don't know.
Maybe. Weird. But it would be cool.
I think Genshin's going to outlive Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, they're almost filled the whole map that's there, but given the success of the game, there's no reason they couldn't add more to the map or even add another map altogether, you know?
Yeah. Although I was thinking about this, and they've got to come out with DLC for Tears of the Kingdom. At the very least, the one thing that it's missing is that there's no hard mode. I don't think. I haven't noticed. There's no hard mode with gold enemies. Gold-colored enemies.
They need to add like a master mode and a heroes mode or something like that.
Right. At the very least.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that could be free DLC. Like, you don't even have to pay for that. That
could be.
It could have just been something like we just haven't done yet, so it'll have to come in later.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Breath of the Wild DLC didn't come for like a year after release or something. But people are saying, oh, there's not going to be a DLC. But it's got to be. I mean,
well, it comes from a interview in Famitsu, where if you translate it, the closest you get to what the Japanese says is, we currently have no plans for DLC. That doesn't mean there won't be DLC. It just means they're not working on it now or whatever. They're just trying to get the game through. Maybe the team also has to work on some other things, you know.
Which is kind of like with Breath of the Wild.
I think they said
really
that too when Breath of the Wild came out.
Right.
You know?
They didn't really plan for the DLC. It was just after it was done, they were like, well, we wish we could have added this and this and this. And then they kind of even had to decide what's going to be DLC, what's going to be in the sequel. Like, you know.
Well, I mean, at first it sounded like they didn't even plan on a sequel. It's just that they had so much DLC, they had to make one.
Right. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
We've gone way over.
We have. Okay. Thank you guys for watching the show. If you enjoy it, please share it with other people. Help grow the audience. It helps more than anything else. But if you want to do a little extra, you can give a donation at streamlabs.com/vomitoriumlive, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.